Hey guys, Vondill here. I've been working on a build for a while, and I think I've refined it to the point where I think it's pretty solid. So I want to share that build with you guys and talk about it. First off, right away, I'm gonna just give you the build, and then after that, I'm going to go into details, the pros and cons of the build, and what makes it particularly good, and the choices you have to make, and everything while you're going through it. So let's see. First off, the masteries, the keystones. We are going press the attack, so we're going into the precision tree. I know a lot of people don't like press the attack, but this is the build. So press the attack, triumph, legend alacrity, and then last stand. And our secondary runes are transcendence and gathering storm. Now, sorcery second. So basically, transcendence and gathering storm are late game power. Let's see. So as for the actual item build, we start with Tiamat into Berserker Greaves, into Phantom Dancer, into Black Cleaver, into Death's Dance, into Infinity Edge, and then you sell the Tiamat for an Essence Reaver. Now, that's the general build. That's your end game build. You can swap out the boots for, Tab Eye or Merc Shreds if you need. But I would highly recommend the Berserker Greaves if you can get away with it, because it procs press the attack faster. Now, as for the details of the build, this build is all about scaling. It's all about late game power. Your secondary runes are kind of useless for the early game. So for this build, we need teleport. Like, Ignite is great, and I love Ignite. I've been running Ignite for several seasons, but this build is weak early, and you need to be able to get back to lane if something goes wrong. So I definitely recommend teleport. You can go Ignite, but it's a lot riskier since this build is kind of weak early. So first, you want to start off with a longsword and a refillable pot. Now, you don't have to start longsword and a refillable pot. I just prefer it because it gets me to my Tiamat faster. I have teleport in case things go wrong in lane. So generally, and I can go super aggressive if I want to. I generally like the longsword start because the Tiamat is already it's your early game power spike, and you really need it. So getting it as fast as possible is great. You can't go the Doran's Shield against a heavy poke lane, but try to get away with the longsword if you can. I wouldn't really recommend Doran's Blade for this build because you don't want to slow down the build too much. Like, you're already slowing it down with the Tiamat itself. So with everything else, I would definitely start with a longsword if you can get away with it. On your first back, definitely pick up a longsword and a rejuve bead if you can, or if possible, upgrade to a Ravenous Hydra or a Tiamat. After that, you want to get your boots and your dagger and eventually upgrade to Berserker Greaves. And after that, you want to go for your Phantom Dancer. So you pick up a Zeal, a couple of daggers. Maybe you'll finish your Phantom Dancer, and then at some point you want to get your Vamp Scepter. You can get it before or after your Phantom Dancer. I prefer probably after, but I really, really prefer the lifesteal. It's a personal thing. It's just a personal preference thing. I just enjoy the lifesteal and bullying people out of lanes. I enjoy taking more trades and just sustaining up and then forcing people out of lane. So after that, you want to get your Black Cleaver. If you have the gold, buy the Phage. If you don't, then just buy, a longsword and a Kindle Gem. But eventually, you're going to have enough for the Black Cleaver. So once you get the Black Cleaver, you're going to start building your Death's Dance. Build the Warhammer first. Once you have the Warhammer, you're CDR capped. You have 40% CDR, so you're pretty good. This is a huge power spike. When you get Black Cleaver, it's a pretty decent power spike. And when you get Death's Dance, it's an even better one. Death's Dance allows you to stay in the fights way longer than you should. And it allows you to time your ults a little bit easier. And the best part about Death's Dance is all the damage dealt to you during your ult doesn't roll over after your ult ends. The game actually thinks that Tryndamere is taking 0 damage rather than taking... he doesn't actually take the damage. He takes 0 damage. So there is no true damage to roll over. It will not kill you after your ult. At this point, you need to start building your Infinity Edge. Now, if you have the gold for a BF sword, buy it. But if you don't have the gold for a BF sword and you have to choose between a pickaxe or a Cloak of Agility, pick the Cloak of Agility. It's more damage. It's better spin. You get more spins more often. It's just better damage in general. So let's see. After that, you want to eventually finish your Infinity Edge, and now you gotta wait until you can finish your Essence Reaver. Once you finish your Essence Reaver, once you just sell your Tiamat and then buy your Essence Reaver is going to give you an extra 36 attack damage through Transcendence. That's because it gives you 30%. You're 30% CDR over the cap. Now, the great thing about this build, it scales. Its scaling is insane, and the problem with this build in the past was always the early game. I think I've managed to patch that up by dropping Ignite for teleport and rushing a Tiamat, so you still have that early to mid game power. Now, even the great thing about another great thing about this game is if you get blue buff. Let's see if I can go get blue buff really quick. When you get blue buff, you actually get an extra 12 damage from blue buff because, you know, it's blue buff gives you 10% CDR. So you got an extra 10%, an extra 12 damage right there. If you get the blue buff, if you, I don't know, invade the enemy jungle or something and grab it. Now, another thing about this build, once you got that, Gathering Storm. Now, Gathering Storm sounds crappy, and it is for the, you know, first 10 minutes of the game, you get nothing. But when you get the game rolling into 20-30 minutes, you're going to end up with an extra 14 attack damage after 20 minutes and like 29 after 30. So you combine that with your Transcendence. A late game build, I mean, if you go into 40 minutes, into a 40-minute game, you're getting 48 AD from Transcendence or 36 AD from Transcendence. You're getting another 48 AD from Gathering Storm. That's an extra 96 attack damage. That's more than Infinity Edge. That's more than any item in the game. Now, you know, if you didn't get your blue buff or whatever, then you'll end up with what, 36 plus 48, so 70, 84 attack damage. Still really good. I mean, if 30 minutes in the game is very common, 29 plus 36, you know, I don't think you might not be full items by then, but definitely it's a very noticeable difference in damage. Now, the strengths of this build, CDR capped, you're very, very hard to kill because of Death Stance. You're super, I mean, your spins on, you know, 40% CDR, so team fighting is really, really good with this build. You can just dance around and basically almost one-shot people. Press the attack gives you a lot more utility in the team fight. This is a late game scaling build, so press the attack is really, really good with this. I wouldn't recommend lethal tempo because it's too hard to proc and it's just not super reliable. You usually get kited or anything during it, but press the attack gives you invaluable damage. Now, a lot of people underestimate press the attack. They say you know, it's bad, it's too hard to proc or whatever. It's really good for tank busting. It's really good for taking care of Ornns. It's really good for killing Maokais. It's really good for killing Shens. It's really good for tank busting. It's also really good against fighters. Now, in a team fight, it's really it's really great because it doesn't only give you the extra 12% damage, it gives everyone on your team does an extra 12% damage from all sources. So, you know, if somebody's tower diving you, they'll take more tower damage. Press the attack, usually in my games, on average, press the attack gives an extra 10 to 12% extra total damage dealt. If you ever look at your runes after a game's over, you'll notice that it says the stats for the runes, the uptime or whatever, and the damage they dealt. And I tried Electrocute for a while and it didn't really work. I mean, it's really strong in the early game, but it doesn't scale nearly as well. So press the attack ends up giving you a lot of damage, more than most people think. So I think it's usually like I mentioned before, it's usually about 10 to 12, but that's just my own personal damage. It doesn't take into account all the damage that everyone else is doing to the enemy team. So it's really, it's deceptive. You get more than you think you are getting. So with this build, you're great in a team fight because of the short cooldown reduction. You don't take that much damage. You have Black Cleaver and press the attack on whatever target you're killing. So if you wanted to focus tanks, your team could focus tank and burn them down really fast with this build. You're an insane duelist with this build. This is the latest scaling build possible with Trynd because you get the most stats and the most attack damage out of it than any other build. The only downside late game to this build is you don't have anti-healing because you don't have Mortal Reminder. If that's the case, then you can decide whether or not you want to drop the Black Cleaver for Mortal Reminder. You don't need Lord Dominic's. You already do enough damage with Press the Attack and Black Cleaver and everything. So one of the great things about this build as well, and just Death Stance in general, is you have Triumph because you're running Precision, but 12% of your total health goes so much further with a Death Stance. When you get 1 or 2 assists in a team fight, that's a lot of health you're getting back, and that's a lot of damage you can end up taking extra because of Death Stance. Now, don't forget that Black Cleaver also gives you an extra 400 health, so that's going to scale with your Triumph just a little bit. It'll give you some extra health. You can swap out your boots for Merc Treads if they are really CC heavy. They have a Sejuani, a Morgana, and a freaking Lulu on their team or something like that. Then definitely give Mercs a shot. You can go Tabi if there's a really heavy duelist on the enemy team, like a Fiora or a Yasuo that's giving you trouble or anything like that, and just go complete overkill on them. But I'm trying to use Berserker Greaves more often because I'm trying to get away with it because it works better with Press the Attack and get it off faster. But that's totally up to you. This build, yeah, you have insane stats in the late game. It's just so strong. The only problem with the build in the past was the early game, and I feel like I solved that problem by fitting in a Tiamat there, starting with a more aggressive starting item to save gold, and getting Teleport to compensate, and I think that really helped it. Alright guys, that's it for me. Go ahead and give it a shot if you want, and let me know what you think. And stop by the stream sometime and we can talk Tryndamere. Alright guys, thanks so much. I'll see you later. Have a great one.